pleasure to introduce Norma and Nancy, a dynamic tag team that's put out a new book that's coming out any day, right? And
It's out.
it is out. Fantastic.
Yes.
And now's our chance to meet the authors and hear a little what you had to say, and certainly save or interrupt with questions, your choice, ladies. But we're going to hear about partners are the customer experience, PXCX for short. And very exciting to learn more. And with that, Norma, since I met you first before Nancy, I'll let you kind of grab the mic and go from there.
Okay, happy to. So we do have a bit of a presentation, and what we thought we would do is just go light on the narrative and encourage conversation around it. So
Excellent.
a lot of this is based on some research that we've done, and we're very thrilled to be able to kind of come out with some new findings, some new connections to how partner experience really drives customer experience and growth and revenue. So my background is that I've been doing channels and partner ecosystems and alliances forever. And, and I've always been very customer centric in it. So I'm really thrilled to be working on this topic with Nancy and being able to share it with you. Nancy?
Yes, and equally thrilled, and thank you so much, Ward, for giving us the opportunity to speak about this topic that we're so passionate about. And it's the result of about a year and a half's time working on it with various, with a survey, with a number of interviews, and we've really gone across the board with different industries, talking to leaders of organizations who are working with partners. And so it's not something that you want to assume that everyone knows how partner experience affects customer experience. We've been learning how much this information is new. So we're excited to share it with all of you.
So with that, I'm going to try and get into presentation mode here.
And I'm not going to talk a lot about myself. I would love to know and meet all of you, and we have bios as part of this presentation. You can find me on LinkedIn too. So we'll dive right into the content.
Yep. So I think we've kind of said everything that we could here. Is that there is a strong correlation between partner experience and customer experience, and there was no definitive research when we began this, but now there is. And there's also a correlation to employee experience, which we're happy to talk about as well. But you probably, unless you've been asleep under a rock, you probably know that there has been a lot of focus on customer experience in the business world, and with very good reason, because many times what customers are buying is an experience. You go into a Starbucks and you wouldn't just go there to buy a plain old cup of coffee, but there's either the barista experience, the cafe, the choices you have, whether, depending on your mood and preferences. So it's really an experience marketing. And of course, Amazon's been king at this. They've been doing this a long time too. It's not just the products, but it's the experience they present online. And it drives retention and loyalty. And of course, that is what we really are focused on these days as we go into a SaaS world. Anything you want to add?
Just that, the other part, when you get into, out of a retail environment and more into the business environment where you have layers of employees, we know that whether the customer has a direct engagement with an employee or not, when an employee knows that the actual work that they do matters to a customer, it has a positive effect. So, we're seeing that organizations are getting more intentional around enrolling employees. That builds what Norma mentioned, is that loyalty from both the employee, which is really important in today's world to retain those good employees that are creating that customer experience, as well as loyalty with the customer. So, this is really a stepping stone as well to create an organization that has a workforce that's more open to digital transformation.
And we were inspired by Tiffany Bova's work here with Salesforce and Forbes, who did a pretty extensive, research not just on customer experience, but now she's coming out with a book called The Experience Mindset. And I think this is, to our original point about customers are buying experiences and the impact not only through partners, but employees and partners, whether or not they're on the front edge of your business. And as HR, partnering people, you have your foot in each of these worlds, customer experience and employee experience.
Yes, so much so.
Very true.
Partner experience. There's been growing acknowledgement, and we've seen that a really great onboarding experience really can accelerate time to revenue, as well as create that long-term partner loyalty. So partners who are committed to your business and your value proposition are more likely to invest their time into building a relationship with you, and also into gaining expertise around your product and service. And so this enables your business to scale through partners.
And I think it's very interesting that now CMOs have begun to recognize this and are beginning to track the partner experience component, as long as all the other customer metrics that they track, because it is a key impact on how they're touched and how they reach their customers. Also would like to note that from companies that have done A/B testing on partner onboarding and partner engagement, that how you treat your partners, the experience you create with them in the first 90 days can determine their lifetime value with you. So it's very important to start out right in understanding what is the partner's experience as they engage with you from the beginning to when they're actually a productive component of your whole go-to-market. And so, as we said, we looked for this research. We knew that there was a connection. We all were intuitively committed to it. And so was everyone we talked to. But we couldn't find the research. We talked to IDC, we talked to Forrester, we talked to Forbes, and, Tiffany was formerly from Gartner. No one was doing this. And so, as the caption said, we're wise men fear to tread. Nancy and I just rushed in, said, we can do it.
And really, everybody that we spoke to agreed that it is high time we take measure, and the stakes are really high. If you looked at that previous stat, 76% of all world trade is flowing through partners. So as one of my good friends says, it's all about the questions. So the questions we asked are illustrated here. How do partners create a great customer experience? How do vendors create a great partner experience? How does a great partner experience influence a great customer experience? And of course, how does that generate increased revenue and growth? So this is the basis of the work.
And just to kind of give you the punchline last, we'll go more deeper into some of the specific research, but kind of what we gleaned out of this. You can't separate customer experience from partners. It cannot be decoupled. They're with the partners through every phase of the customer journey. And typically not just one, typically 5, 6, 7 partners in any kind of enterprise or particularly digital transformation.
And also, we do know today that the smartest partners are selling business outcomes to customers. So to be successful, they have to be educated, they have to be enabled, and the assets have to be easily accessible on multiple formats through various platforms. And to do this well, organizations need to have highly intuitive and innovative go-to-market strategies, as well as state-of-the-art automation. So automation, really, according to Forrester's recent reports, that is table stakes. And we find that as well today.
Yeah.
Everybody we work with.
And quite often, is what I find with partner organizations is that once the sale is made, it's like, okay, we're done. But in today's world of SaaS, your business is built on renewals and retention. Mm-hmm. And so the post-sale component becomes more and more important, and your partners are there. I often joke that the typical SI strategy is the Hotel California strategy. You check in, but you never leave. So they want to be there, for the long term to grow and build the business over time.
And of course, relationships matter. They are still foundational. We'll talk a little bit more about that later.
And lastly, we know that companies are doing their NPS studies with the customers. They're doing partner SAT surveys with their partners. They're not correlating them. They're not sufficient. They're not really tied together so that you understand if you change this and this in the partner experience, what does that mean to customers? And just to reinforce that point, one of the folks we talked to was Guidewire. They do regular NPS. They realize that partners are a very key part of the customer experience, but they really don't know how much. And curiously, this particular company manages their systems integrators, these big global systems integrators, PwC, EY, that class, out of their customer success organization, because it is that important to them that the customers have, I think one of them put it, they wanted to have 100% referenceable customer base.
Amazing.
It's that important to them.
Really innovative.
Wow.
Yeah. And, those of us who've been in this business and the partner community for a long time know that relationships are what tie it all together.
So partners span the customer journey. So we asked, where are the touch points? What roles do partners play in the customer journey? Check all, apply. And a lot of them got checked. You can see the top one that 87% of our respondents said that partners identify the opportunity. So they say partners are getting them into opportunities they would never otherwise see. But you can see we've kind of got this color coded where the gold is pre-sales, the green is point of sale, and purple post-sale. And you can see just all the different touch points, obviously different partners playing in different niches, delivering a different part of the customer experience. Some of the top ones I think are really key and get overlooked. They identify not just the opportunity, but key decision makers. They provide business strategy and transformation advice, and they create the partner value proposition.
Mm-hmm.
Only 59% say they transact or contract the deal. So the role of partner influencers is becoming more and more important in how they provide, key aspects of the customer journey. And then, of course, post-sales. I think this is an underrated and often underappreciated component, that your partners are there after you're gone, and they're there to help grow the business, manage, retention, and add on to their customer environment to increase stickiness.
Mm-hmm.
Norma, I have a quick question. What do you think about these companies that are doing SaaS solutions, but they stop paying their partners after year one or even after year two? What are your thoughts about that? I mean, what you're saying here, I'm seeing you're painting a different picture of why we might not want to do that.
Well, here's the deal on that. I can hear what you're saying is that we should pay them to stay in there and pay them for renewals.
That's kind of my gut feeling, especially what you're showing here.
Okay, but here's what's not shown here. Partners will make 6 to 7 times more money on services.
True.
Than they do on the product.
Right.
So if they don't get a retainer or 10% of license fee incentive on the renewal, but they still have a ton of services, they're going to go where they make their money.
Absolutely. That's a great answer.
And
so you're saying that the commission really is not as relevant as the services, which I always thought was at least a 4-time factor, but you're saying 6 to 7, and I agree with that.
It depends. One partner might not be providing all of it, but it can be
true.
When I did this research at a large platform company, a large hyperscaler,
mm-hmm.
it was a spread. Some of them were only getting 1-to-1, but they weren't doing very much.
Mm-hmm.
Those who are doing AI hitting 7 times.
Right.
Mhm.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Thank
And-
you. Thanks, Norma. Very helpful.
And that's a good segue too, because what we also wanted to comment on just briefly is we're seeing, and I think from an HR perspective, you'll relate to this, that there's a big transformation in channels, starting with the roles and even the titles of the stakeholders who are running these programs, from the traditional channel chief to general managers of ecosystem. And those folks are committed to finding where the partner delivers that value, along the way on the customer journey, and how they do it. And that ties directly to that revenue piece we were just talking about, whether it's through influence, whether it's through layering on their own IP or managed services, or through enrichment and retention programs, which are getting a much bigger focus in today's subscription-based world. So we talk about trust too, because trust is, oops.
You done? I apologize.
It's okay. The growth of influence, as I mentioned a moment ago, is really profound, and it speaks to trust that's found through partners. And we've been hearing this term, trust is the new oil. And increasingly in our virtual worlds, it demands trust. So customers are inundated with data. They have so much information coming at them that they really rely on a trusted advisor to give them, some comfort and some validation in what decisions they're making. And so, those cycles that you see represented here, builds trust between the partner and the customer, which is essentially strengthened and recycled along the way, and even more critical once again in that month-to-month subscription-based world.
We also asked the question, how do customers benefit from a strong partner experience? Check all that apply, and apparently they all apply, but to different degrees. So you can see some of the things here. Customers realize better business outcomes. That was one of the key ahas that we had in this. They benefit from working with partners with deep industry expertise. They know their pain. They know the issues. They know what's disrupting the industry or where they might be disruptors. They offer a more complete solution. They're again to this notion that 5 or 6 partners are engaged in almost every opportunity. In fact, where I think you had a data point of that with HR Tech, that there are X number of partners involved in a typical opportunity.
Yeah, I don't know what the stats are, but yeah, that wouldn't be surprised at all.
Okay.
Norma, I'd add one more thing to this that I found in a global world, global economy. The partner delivers a better understanding of the local conditions and the local laws, local customs that the vendor will never know. We will never be able to understand intimately what's going on inside of Switzerland, much less, Brazil or some other place, but the partner does.
And that's particularly true of certain products more than others. I mean, like HR, I think is when it's particularly prone to that, because the rules, the regulations, the expectations, the norms are all different in different places, and you've got to be there to know it.
Mm-hmm.
And better post sales and services, which we commented on earlier, that is a key to longevity in an account, lifetime value. Benefit from working partners who have certifications and specializations, partners who know your systems, your products, your technologies, can provide, on the ground expertise. And customers want to know that partners have a relationship with their suppliers and vendors. So there's none of this, blame game, that they know that you're working together, particularly when you have multiple partners in an opportunity. They want to know that ecosystem is being orchestrated and the partners are working with each other.
Yeah, so really the bottom line here, what we saw is that nearly 100% of the respondents noted that customers realize better business outcomes through partners. And we felt this was quite a breakthrough to see that nearly 100% agreed upon this, because it wasn't that long ago that those of us from the partner and alliance community were still defending the value of partners in the equation. So earlier in the earlier slide, we saw 72% of our respondents indicated that partners were creating the customer value prop and building the case early in the sales process, which creates that compelling reason to buy. So, the partners who assist in this process, to the point of local matters as well, they need to know the customer, their industry, the environment, as we talked about, and their challenges, as well as the opportunity for the customer if they decide to award the business, which is where the relationships really matter. And the strong partner experience, helps that vendor get their product or service designed into the value prop. So as partners, they need to understand the offer what your offer contributes to the overall business outcome.
Yeah, and I think this quote from PwC illustrates that point, and it's, I think, very important to understand in that I hear many product people complain that the SIs say they're agnostic. They won't recommend my product. They won't sell my product. They say they're only going to deliver and recommend what the customers need.
Mhm.
And so you've got to work that backwards and say, well, of course your customers need this because it contributes to a better business outcome.
Mm-hmm. Which are becoming more complex.
All right. So we
Good
asked
question.
also what partner benefits impact a customer experience. We had a long list. It was like 20 different things. And these are what came up as the top 5. Nancy, you want to?
Sure. And I saw Lloyd had his hand raised. Lloyd, did you have a question?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm listening to this and it all makes perfect sense. Like, yeah, we're gonna have an ecosystem and we're gonna coordinate with our partners. There's a cost to that. And I'm wondering, if you put resources into making something work, it'll tend to make it work. But is there some kind of measurement for when it's worth it, or how much is it worth?
Not yet. There are some methodologies that are being developed and that we're beginning to see come into play. But really, part of what we discovered through this whole process was that it's an area that is ripe for advancement, to say the least.
And I think the next slide, when we get to it, will kind of answer some of that question as to why it makes sense, or at least why this is something you should be able to justify.
Oh.
We've been upgraded. Oh, thank you.
So just to go over this briefly, the sales training and enablement need to recognize that most technology buyers today are functional and they're line of business owners. So they're looking for solutions for business problems. And most of the buying process is now accomplished before they actually engage with a sales rep of any kind. The other thing that's important to know is that your product or service is probably only one component of an overall solution that the customer is buying. So again, being clear on what you contribute and differentiate that solution in the language of business outcomes becomes really critical. And as these ecosystem selling models continue to evolve, collaborative co-selling is becoming more the norm in going to market, and developing that ability is increasingly a crucial competency amongst these ecosystem partners, as these complex solutions such as digital transformation really require that interaction and collaboration of multiple partners in that customer journey. And of course, collaborative selling is now proving, at least anecdotally, to be extremely effective and more productive than non-partnered selling.
Why don't we go to that? Impact of collaborative selling. This actually came from a company you folks know well, SuccessFactors. They were tracking this quite diligently, and Jim Griffin, who actually provided me with these numbers, is doing similar stuff at Beamery and saying he's getting even better results. So think about this. What would be the impact of these effects on your pipeline? What if your deal sizes were twice as large? What if you're getting 40% higher close rates? What if your sales cycles were 40% faster? Just do the math on that. What would that mean for your sales? If you could track and demonstrate this within your own company, you'd be a hero.
Right.
This is what every CRO wants to hear.
We are tracking this. I don't know if you can hear me, but it's amazing we're seeing. We're seeing exactly what you're saying here, maybe even a little higher. And especially when we did enablement training for 2 partners as a test in January, we noticed that both of their sales and their referrals and everything went through the roof. They suddenly pulled into first and second place on all of our partners just with that enablement. But we're seeing that the same things you're showing here, our metrics are showing us, and now we're showing up and this is where you have to have that place at the C-level table to show everyone what the partner program is doing.
Yeah.
The metrics.
And you always have to get the sales reps engaged too.
Totally.
And
they have to understand it so they're not competing against you.
Right.
Well, the end point is that if they can work with partners and drive bigger deals, higher close rates and shorter sales cycle, they'll be doing that math against their commissions.
Totally. Yeah. It's initially a paradigm shift for the sales team, but once they get there, to your point, once they see that in action, then they are believers from that point onward.
Yeah. Yeah. It's right there in their paycheck. They will believe.
Yeah. And that's what they care about. So, and I think that's a good segue to Andrew, talking about the training aspect of it, because, technical training and enablement has traditionally been like a top focus for partner programs. So it's still really important. And training and certifications are often, a key requirement if you want to achieve a specialization. So in the MSP, the VAR, the SI world, customers do qualify their partners based on their technical expertise. And 87% of our respondents indicate that customers benefit from working with partners who have those certifications and those trainings. But also, I think it's interesting, your story, because at the end of the day, partners are going to sell what they know. And in fact, they're selling their expertise almost more than your product, because that's their reputation on the line. So they're going to lead or recommend the products or solutions that they have the most confidence in. And that also protects them and their reputation, because they know the costs and the risks that are associated, and they can also manage them more directly, which again brings value to everybody, including the customer.
So Guidewire, who we again quote here, has been nominated for an Alliance Excellence Award for their work on customer-centric specializations. They designed this from the customer backwards. They didn't just say, oh, we need a specialization. They took a look at what their own professional services were doing in these 100% referenceable customer implementations. And by the way, the norm in the industry is about a 65% success rate.
Oh, wow.
And they were targeting 100. And they designed the whole specializations in terms of what the bar the customer had to reach from the perspective of how they could ensure high quality customer experience. And I'll tell you, when they rolled this out, because I was, full disclosure, we were the consulting company that helped them. The partners at first were going, you're going to make me do what? Because it was rigorous. It was hard. It was stuff numbers of certifications, customer referrals. They had to follow a certain professional service. They either had to follow Guidewire's professional service handbook, or they had to demonstrate that their own methodologies were as good. And they had to show that they collaborated through the whole process of implementation. And these are long implementations. These are like 1-year consulting gigs for these guys. Big money. So they whined about it at first, but now that the program is up and going, I had one of the guys came back to me and said, this is just genius. It keeps out the riffraff. Partners who are willing to commit and deliver high quality are doing very well.
Tweet right there waiting to happen. Keeps out the riffraff. Love it.
That's not the riffraff.
I think everybody at Workday has that tattooed on the back of their neck. I'm not sure, but.
So in this instance, we're looking at that go-to-market mix with the partners, and with 86% indicating that partners influence or lead that customer buying decision, that a partner involved sale leads to the customer buying decision is really, what am I trying to say? This is the go-to-market strategy that's most dominant today. And, all these things are leading to that particular strategy, which, we're wondering, okay, so why is this so decisive? And, a lot of it has to do with business leaders recognizing that they're seeking to compete in this global economy now. And in order to do that, with the business models changing, they have to acknowledge some of those changes. And we highlighted a few of these. First of all, buyers are increasingly millennial. That is a very big deal. That changes the game. Also, the customer journey in a post-COVID world looks more like a consumer buyer than ever before. And also, there are an average of 28 stops in that customer journey. And along the way, they're meeting an influencer or a partner at pretty much every step. And as we alluded to earlier, in a $95 trillion economy, with 75% is flowing indirectly. So, this is just really an area where we're seeing these trends happening very quickly, where you have this progressive retention channel that needs to happen as we're moving to subscription-based models. So consider the following. So there are a few stats here. IBM and Dell have invested recently between $100 million and $1 billion in subscription-based models that are supported by alliances. And Cisco has also gone all in with their software subscription model. So today it's trending somewhere just above 30%, and they have a commitment to increase that to 100%. Wow. So retention, comes in to drive that. Partners are nurturing those deeper relationships, and they're driving the value through the stickiness. So, and not to continue repeating it, but it is so important that upsell and cross-sell and enrichment are much greater revenue streams than ever before, and really important. And to Norma's point earlier about the CFO, they are looking to their alliances for compensation strategies that support these revenue streams while maintaining that profitability in the long game. And that's why it's so important to understand, where those multiples exist.
And I think Nancy pretty much covered this, the importance of the post and sales and services, being there for the full journey with the customer, to keep that upsell, cross-sell, and retention going. This is the lifetime value of the customers.
They have to achieve 108% sales retention to stay revenue neutral now. And then, of course, the relationships matter between the partners too. When we talk about ecosystem, that puts an emphasis on the fact that, today's technology implementations for digital transformation are pretty complex, and they're comprised of multiple vendors and services. So strong relationships amongst the partners is also really crucial, because, of course, customers want that worry-free solution, and they don't want to be involved in any sort of dispute, and customers have to provide that. Partners have to provide that. So if there are issues like an integration or performance, the partners need to work together to resolve it, rather than leaving the customer with that never-ending cycle of finger pointing and blame. And if the partner can do that, it really demonstrates the value of the relationships. And I always like to say that's the essence of ecosystem. So it also reinforces the role of the integrator, who takes responsibility for orchestrating the vendors and the various component products and services to ensure those problems do get resolved without dragging the customer right into the middle of it.
So got a couple questions on this. As was discussed earlier, in terms of the relationship between the partners, totally agree. We see a lot of turnover in the HR industry, and I think most of us know why, but we want to help fix it, right? And part of it is just being aware of the benefit that can come from it if it's done right? But relationship, a lot of sales people, direct sales anyway, they sell it and then they hand it off to a customer support manager, or somebody that manages the relationship from there. I'm wondering, from a partner experience or customer experience view, is that common where there's somebody managing the relationship with the partner or the customer before the sale and then it changes to somebody else? And is that maybe a bad idea? Somebody should have full life cycle perhaps with their partners and the customers that go with it?
I
Well,
would say that typically the alliance manager or partner manager supposedly has full life cycle responsibility, but typically they're incented and focused more on filling the pipeline.
mhm, yes.
So I think there maybe is a role for it, and I think your partner manager should have life cycle, but I think the customer success team actually has a role in working with partners on that long-term strategy as well.
Mhm. And as I've been working with a few SaaS companies, and even one in the HR equation, and we were helping them build their partner support team and looking to include individuals who were part of the post-sale support that are on the partner team. So they're engaging directly with partners to
Yeah.
make sure that that sale that now occurs every 30 days in many cases, instead of one time, that experience carries through.
That's great. Yeah, no, it should be. And I imagine there's a saturation point too, right? If you have a large partner, you might not be able to take on more than one, or so the others would have to be handed off.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, some of the large companies that have large teams, if they're dealing with a very large global partner, it's not one partner manager. It can be a series of people. Often you have a regional partner manager, people who
Right.
are doing
Hmm.
deals regionally, or you might have a technical, a solutions architect assigned. So it can, for the larger organizations, they can put a lot of, full team in place. Smaller companies typically do what we do, peanut
Right.
butter it around.
And that's where automation too, as we mentioned earlier, is table stakes, because if you can automate some of that post-sale process, those touch points as
Mhm.
well, and keep the customer engaged. And, for partners, there's lots of tools nowadays that, assist them through that journey. I think automation's playing a bigger role.
Yeah. Okay, final question. We asked how much of your partner's experience influences the relationship with your customer? And not surprising, over 78% said either a lot or a great deal. So it's becoming a much more, I guess, visible, or much more, people are becoming much more aware of the relationship. As I said, it's something I think, particularly in the partner world, we're intuitively aware of, but we're just starting to document it. So it's funny how you attach a number to something, it actually becomes real. So
Right.
wasn't before, but now we have a number.
Once we have awareness, awareness and intention brings many things to life.
So some of our call to action on this, number one, is to think ecosystem, because it's not just one partner anymore that has a customer relationship. It is multiple, and you need to be part of that equation and orchestrating that experience through your partners.
Mapping the customer journey with those touch points for the partners is really important. And that's where, again, automation can play a big part to help you really take and expand your team.
And, even as you identify each touch point, look at how you're enabling each touch point. How are you equipping your partners to deliver the best that they can through their experience and the experience that they provide your customer?
And measuring, that impact on the customer experience. So, we are challenging everyone to continue to look for innovations that can really enable this, because it is an emerging science, and we know that there's a lot of good work yet to be done. So, hopefully this research will stimulate even more new innovation along these lines.
And in fact, Andrew, I would love to take some time and talk with you if you're willing. Since you've said you've done some specific AB, enablement in this area and seen some changes in results. We'd love to hear.
I would love to share with you the dashboards we've created using Salesforce.com and show you what we're doing, how we're measuring partners, and that relationship between partner experience, customer experience, lead generation, time to close. I would really love to share that with you.
We would love to see that.
Love to see it. All right.
I shared it with Katrina yesterday, but I would love to share it with you and get your feedback as well.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
So
by the way, are these slides? Oh, sorry. Good word.
Well, there's an ebook that you can purchase, right, from ASAP
Yes,
or through the store there, I guess, right?
Yep,
Yeah,
we're coming up on that.
Now for the hard close. Here we go.
That's right.
Can we get a copy of these slides after the call? Would that be possible?
Yes.
So, as we mentioned earlier, building relationships is really what ties it all together. And so some of those touch points need to include human touch points. So looking for ways to bring those opportunities, along the way. And that's a big deal and fun too, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I don't think you can underestimate the power of executive sponsorship. Having your executives on board with this, ensuring, if you've got that hard data, like you seem to have, Andrew, on what the power of collaborative selling is and partner enablement, that'll get some support. But it is very important, I think, to have that executive sponsorship throughout this process.
Agree. And unfortunately, we have to show the metrics to them. They like, many of those people that sit around the CFO and the CEO like to see metrics and charts like you've shown, but they also like to see the specific impact. They want to see those metrics for sure.
Absolutely. Nancy, you want to bring it home?
Sure. Sorry, I was in the chat. So Jay McBain, who wrote the foreword to our ebook and has done a lot of research on some of these topics. I love this quote from him, that an outcome isn't a point in time, it's a spectrum, never a perfect outcome, a continuous improvement, and the stickiness is the partner experience, which leads to that customer experience. So there you go, Katrina, back at the end of the rainbow.
Very nice.
There's me. So this is the hard sell, right? We have written a book. It has been released. It's an ebook. It is a fast read, lots of pictures. Mostly we wanted this to be very hard hitting with millennials, the next generation. So lots of pictures, short read, lots of punch. You can read it at the, I'll put the URL in the chat box where you can order it. Use the promo code for a discount. And folks, we priced this as an ebook. So this is, I think was $5.99 list price. So this is going to cost you less than a cup of coffee at Starbucks. So
wow,
encourage you to download the book and share it with your team. We've just presented this at the ASAP Summit and had a great response. We had a couple of people say they were going to buy a book for everyone on the team because they want the team to start thinking customer experience and how they can enable partners to deliver. So we're very, our intent is not to sell books, but to change the world. So
right.
Get the book
And,
out there.
and some of those folks have asked us to come and give this presentation, internally to some of their folks, especially if they're, they are needing that executive sponsorship and they're looking for, broadening, the mindset relative to partners and what it means to the bottom line.
Are the charts and graphs you showed today on this in the ebook as well?
Oh yes. That's where you're going to get a lot more actually than what you've seen in the presentation.
The question with the PXCX, particularly as I'm working with organizations overseas, like some of the conference groups and stuff, they call their exhibitors, customers, partners. And then companies call their customers partners. And it gets very confusing to me anyway. Like we had LinkedIn, last time they came on with ServiceNow, and the lady's title at LinkedIn was, partnership or HR technology partnership director or something like that. And I'm like, oh, she's managing the tech stack for their HR products, like, the recruiting products and things like that. No. She just manages the internal HR team and calls them internally partnerships. So is there
Yeah.
a movement underway, or how can we start one that maybe tries to get more clarity so it's not calling, people aren't calling customers partners if they're really not?
Yeah, I'm seeing that more and more too. And it's like no one wants to say that someone they're actually selling to someone, so they're partnering with someone.
Right. Yeah,
And-
that too. Sure, totally.
And yeah, you should partner with your customers, but then it confuses who you're truly partnering with, meaning when you're actually joined in a collaboration, that doesn't mean that you're collecting a PO. But
Right.
yeah, it's getting kind of confusing. And it's confusing when I work with the systems integrators a lot too, because they call a partner as someone who's got an equity position with the company.
Well, and one of the
Right.
things, Lord, that we've seen, in working with clients and organizations is the very first thing that we have to do is establish the nomenclature. Like, who do you call
Yep.
what? So usually that's part of my kickoff call is I
Oh,
ask
brilliant.
them
Brilliant.
for
Yeah.
a description of the various roles within the organization and what they do.
Yeah, that's super smart.
Saves a lot of time.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. And yeah, I even see that within the vendors themselves, especially the larger ones. Yeah, they call them different. Like, are you talking about your client or an actual partner?
It seems, I think that's a little marketing's influence on HR, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no doubt.
All right. Any other questions?
So the next version of the book, what do you think, what do you leave out that you wish you could have done, or you might do as a follow-on publication?
Well, I think this area is evolving. And what I'm seeing is this particular client I had, Guidewire, is actually looking at how they can measure partner impact on their customers. I would love, a Rev 2.0 to be more focused on how these new metrics are evolving and what people are showing in terms of you do this, you change this and this and this with your partners, you get this kind of outcome with your customers. Would love to see more of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
drivers, right? Definitely.
yeah, hopefully, we'll be able to come back in a year and talk to some of these people again, and we'll have a lot more data to follow on a report on, hard data, similar to what Andrew's talking about, and also some guidance. Like I'm really looking for, through this process that we can continue to uncover some strategies and some processes and even the technology to help make the measurement. Because today there's still a lot of question about that. Although I think that Salesforce dashboard is probably the best way right now, if you can afford to make those modifications.
Well, in your opinion, what are the top measurements? I would think it's, new customer or common customer acquisition between the partners and retention, whether it be for references or just, ongoing subscription revenue and things like that.
Yeah, I think the back end is really going to show how the customer success is impacted, right? Are customers consuming more? Are they buying additional add-ons to the product? Are they absorbing, those sorts of things I think are going to really show better outcomes.
And also, how is that affecting the ecosystem? Are they also buying from others in your ecosystem?
Totally. And that expands, exponentially, right?
Footprint and stickiness, yes.
Right.
I think potentially there's a referral measurement that could be really valuable.
Yep. And influence, Greg. Yep.
Does your data show the difference between like types of partners, like whether it's a referral where maybe you don't really jointly own the customer? It's more of a, here's somebody that wants or needs what you have kind of thing? That would,
Well, I'll tell you what happened with the survey itself. We asked a lot of those demographic questions and like partner type and region and company size, and nobody wanted to answer those questions.
it adds up quickly, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so we
Totally.
condensed it down to the core things we wanted to know to hope to really drive getting answers to those key questions. And we sacrificed some of the slicing and dicing for that. But
going back to your previous comment, Ward, that might be another place where we could entice people to get a little more granular with us going forward. I'm not sure if it was kind of an aversion to answering the question or just an aversion to surveys, period.
Right? Yeah,
there's
probably
a lot of that going
latter,
around.
Well, I would think
But
some of the
when-
PRMs or, any of the platforms that are out there now would have some of the data questions. Are they allowed to share it? Even with permission, it might be tricky, right? But if they're tracking, like Greg, pointed out, if it's a referral, there might be a certain percentage. Obviously, like, Partners Tap and others or Partner Stack that track payouts and stuff like that, that could help measure the ROI, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without having to ask people for it if the data is already there. But it would
Yeah.
take a lot of collaboration in the ecosystem and industries to gather up that data and cross-connect it to show what's really happening. But
I think that's a good point, because I think PRMs are kind of stuck in last century. I think that they're really kind of a one-to-many kind of management. They really haven't bridged over to what I would call an ecosystem system, where they can really see what the interactions and dynamics are within an ecosystem, with the growth and payoff.
Yeah, we've had to do, right? It took us about 8 months of writing integrations between Partner Stack and Salesforce.com to really get to the level that we wanted. To your point, Norma, of having that newer. We agree that the PRMs were in the last century, and we could use some of the data from that, but it didn't tell the story. And only when we finally combined that with some other data sources and created a new dashboard, then we could actually get the full picture.
Right.
That's
And then
crazy.
you still have to you're still dependent on your entire organization being trained how to enter data when they interface or they have any kind of connection with a customer or a partner, to make sure that everybody is using the same nomenclature, the same classification, so that things don't get lost or
Right.
misclassified.
Yep, that's a really good point. It's really important to create the nomenclature and all of those components first before you launch one of these programs. And even if you're adding like multiple tools, like you may have Crossbeam, for example, that also is coming in along with your PRM, your Partner Stack, and your Salesforce. And, a big mistake can be to try to launch all of those without picturing the outcome first. So I always have to say, in the world of opportunity, you start with the destination and work your way back.
Yeah.
brilliant.
So funny you say that, because that is what happens. People don't really know what that future vision is yet. And so they start out because they hear that other people are using it, or they'll attend like a session like today's meeting, run off and do that, but without having that end picture in mind. And a lot of times people have difficulty trying to visualize that.
It's really expensive.
Yep. They need someone like Norma and Nancy and Ward to come in
Exactly.
and tell them what to do.
That's right. Thank you for that.
Totally. Yeah. And if you're watching this recording, a 10% discount on your first engagement with either one. 20% if it's with both. Well, we are out of time.